Greetings. So I received this image on Facebook from someone writing under an account named Yoruba TR Resurrection of Ancient Hebrew Language and People. And the person simply posted it into one of my threads. And for those who don't know, just as there are some who have hinted or frankly argued that Biblical Hebrew might actually be the Eʋegbe language, Eʋegbe, so too there are others out there who claim that the biblical text is actually written in a form of the Yoruba language. And proponents of that Yoruba view actually make attempts to reinterpret the biblical Hebrew text as Yoruba. And as luck would have it, this image attempts to do such with the opening verse of the 22nd Psalm. And I don't think that's coincidental, as I recall asking a proponent of the view that biblical Hebrew is Yoruba about precisely that verse a little over 3 years ago. And I actually had forgotten about that, the fact that I had asked proponents of the view about the 22nd Psalm, but I guess certain proponents of that view had not forgotten such, as one brought it back to my remembrance by bringing it directly to a thread of mine, even though that thread was on another topic. Now, for that reason, it seemed auspicious to make a short video exploring what was produced in this attempt to read the opening verse of the 22nd Psalm as Yoruba. And for the sake of clarity, let me note that this is the relevant text being explored here. The person who put this breakdown together wrote the text in the Phoenician script. And for those who aren't familiar with the Phoenician script, here's how that same string of characters would look in the Ashuri script, which is to say what is now the standard Hebrew script, which is also called the square script or the block script. Now, this right here is apparently the attempted translation of the Hebrew text. It no doubt reads quite differently from how the opening verse of the 22nd Psalm reads in any Jewish or Christian translation, whether ancient, medieval, or modern. But more importantly, in my opinion, is the attempted transliteration. This is where they attempt to show what they feel is the correct vocalization for the Hebrew text, and thus that's their attempt to show that it's actually a form of the Yoruba language. So here's a clearer format for the Hebrew text and the attempted Yoruba interpretation of that text. It implies that the Hebrew text should be vocalized along these lines. Notice that what might traditionally be understood as a single word, like Eli, is broken into multiple words, with single characters being their own individual words. And you may notice these gray squares, which I placed here, to represent phantom consonants. The reason why I did this is because the Yoruba interpretation of the text not only vocalizes the characters, but puts vocalizations before certain characters, almost as if there was an invisible aleph there. In one case, a character is vocalized both before and after the consonant, where the yod is treated as having two syllables, iye. There's also a phantom nun, as one of the words ends with an N phoneme without a nun actually being present. I'm not sure if the proponent of this attempt might want to argue that Biblical Hebrew had something like a process of nunation, like what's represented by tanween in Arabic. But whatever the case, one gets the impression that the interpreter took considerable liberties with the Hebrew text. Now, the reason this particular verse is significant when exploring these fringe interpretations is because we have something close to an ancient transliteration of this phrase in Matthew 27:46. And the same text gives us an ancient translation. That translation corresponds to the English, my God, why did you abandon me?" As far as what that transliteration implies, the only major difference is the verb lishbok from the shin bet kof root instead of the, rather than the verb la'azob from the ayin zayin bet root, right? But, on a lesser note, as this is one other potential difference at least, and I've touched on this in previous videos, one might also propose that the Aramaic lama is employed, with an aleph at the end rather than Hebrew lama with a hey at the end. Interestingly, even this Greek transliteration gets subjected to a fringe alternative reinterpretation by some of the folks out there. See, I recently received this comment on a video, and the comment was proposing that the relevant statement in Matthew 27:46 is actually from the Xhosa language. And the comment recommended that I check out the Johnny John account on YouTube. And sure enough, that account, the Johnny John account, has a video proposing that the statement in Matthew 27:46 is actually in the Xhosa language. And I'll link to the video in the video description. Now, that video argues that the statement actually means, quote, this is for the Sabbath keepers, end quote. And this interpretation, too, has to add a phoneme, and it also has to even remove a phoneme, right? You notice that shabachtani, it just removes the k, But whatever the case, both of these proposed readings, which is to say that both the Yoruba reading and the Xhosa reading have to ignore the translation which Matthew itself provides, which should be all the more reason to doubt either of these interpretations. Now, I already gave a pretty thorough look at the structure of this text in my video from last August, titled Psalm 22:1 in Eʋegbe and Semitic languages. And I'm going to take a much briefer look at the text in this video, but what I say here is no doubt going to overlap considerably with what I stated there in that video. But if you check that video out, you'll also get to see how well the mainstream understanding of this text fits within the larger Semitic spectrum, how well it fits with, Arabic interpretations and Aramaic interpretations and even a Ge'ez interpretation. Whatever the case, jumping right in, the opening two words are Eli, Eli, my God, and each one is a word for deity with a first-person singular possessive suffix. That's implied from a standard grasp of Hebrew, from the translation which is made available in the Synoptic Gospels, and it's also from the transliteration available in Matthew, and it's also implied by, all the translations, whether ancient or medieval, right? Then we have lama, or like I said, it could be the Aramaic lama, where you put an aleph instead of the hey. But whatever the case, this is simply asking why, right? This construction literally means to what, right? More figuratively, for what? For what reason? Hence why it can be translated as asking why. And again, this is implied by the ancient transliteration that we find in the Synoptic Gospels. It's implied by the translation provided by Matthew and subsequent ancient translations, into Ge'ez, into Syrian Aramaic, and it fits with a standard understanding of Hebrew and other Semitic languages. And then we come to the base verb. Now, again, the biblical Hebrew text employs a different root from what is implied by the ancient Greek transliterations of Christ's statement. And so for that reason, I would propose that Christ was actually employing an Aramaic paraphrase of the 22nd Psalm. The Shin Bet Kof root is actually implied in all Aramaic translations of this text, whether it be the Jewish Targum to the Psalms or the Beshita, whether it could be the Beshita to the Psalm or the Beshita to, the Gospel of Mark or the Beshita to the Gospel of Matthew. And so, too, the old Syriac readings, found at Sinaiticus and so on, right? Now, appended to the root, right, you have the tau suffix, which signifies that it's in the second person singular perfect tense. Whether you render it azabta or shabakta, it means you abandoned. And then the end gives the object, right? It's a first person singular pronominal suffix. Whether it's azabtani or shabaktani, it means you abandoned me. And again, that's implied by not only the ancient transliterations that we have, but so too the various ancient translations, right? And with that brief run-through, I can sum up here, right? First and foremost, the view presented here comes from a mainstream understanding of Hebrew. Moreover, the standard view has independent lines of ancient support in the form of an ancient transliteration and multiple ancient translations. Meanwhile, the alternative Yoruba and Xhosa interpretations, which actually contradict each other, do not have any ancient evidence in their favor. They seem to be mere modern, innovative assertions, right, or mere guesswork, right? And this contrast leaves one to wonder, why should we abandon the position that has ancient support for a position which lacks such? Or to put that question another way, should we side with the view which is based on an understanding of actual Hebrew and has corroborating support from ancient transliterations and multiple ancient translations? Or should we side with one of these bits of modern guesswork which lack any ancient support? Frankly, to ask the question is to answer it. And with that, I'll close this short video here. As always, I look forward to any comments, questions, or criticisms that others may have. As I like to point out, I don't censor anyone here, so feel free to share your thoughts, whether positive or negative. And with that, God bless.